Okay, welcome. Welcome to our Finance Friday weekly call. My name is Jerry. I'm the owner, founder, CEO of a company called Wealth Dynamics. If you're joining me tonight, you're one of two people. You're either brand new, you've never seen me before. So I want to welcome you if that is the case. Or you're somebody that's been on before. You've watched us and you've attended a couple of times. So every week we do a course. I do a course where I talk about finances. Okay. Financial literacy is honestly a passion of mine. It's something that's not taught in schools. It should be. It's not taught in college. When it is, it's taught by broke professors who don't actually have financial independence of their own. And in our adult lives, we deal with money on a daily basis. Like next to, gravity and oxygen, we interact with it probably the most in our lives, right? So why is it that we don't know about it? And so I've set out to solve that problem. I think that financial literacy is something that if we were to all have that, a lot of the problems that we have in our lives would just be gone. They'd go away. Okay. So that's what this course is about. Now, if you're joining me tonight, I want to thank you for being here. If you're on Zoom, if you're on Facebook, if you're watching the replay on YouTube, or any of our other platforms, I want to thank you for tuning in. The goal of tonight's course is to talk about investing. Okay. I want to talk about what do I do with 100 grand? Okay. If I have $100,000, where do I invest that? What's the smartest thing to do? Okay. And so we're going to talk about some specifics. Before I do that, I want to cover a couple of ground rules. Okay. These are very important. It's something I cover every week, but I want to make sure that we really understand why we're hitting these rules, how they apply to you. So number one is I want to have you get rid of the idea that finances can't be learned. Okay. They definitely can, right? I'm a C average student. I grew up in Big Lake, Alaska. I shouldn't be a millionaire at 29. I am. My parents were divorced. I didn't go to college. Like I didn't have, like the tough childhood. I wasn't beat. I wasn't abused, but there's no statistical reason why I should be sitting here, with a multi-million-dollar net worth at the age that I am. And that's not a brag on me. That's actually to say, guys, it really is that simple. Anyone can do this. You have to have the right information. Okay. And you have to have the right work ethic. And if you get the right information and you've got the right work ethic, it's possible. Okay. Now it's hard work. And also most of the information you're going to learn conflicts with everything we've been taught. So you have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to say, okay, I learned that in school. Maybe that's not right. I learned that from my professor. Maybe that's not right. I learned that from my parents even. Maybe that's not right. Or I learned this from my financial advisor and maybe it's not right. But we have to realize that money is not impossible for us to know about. I believe you can learn about it. And I wouldn't be here teaching this course if I didn't believe in you, if I didn't think that, hey, you can learn about money just like I could. Okay. Poor white kid from Houston, Alaska. No reason why, right? And I'm here today. You are too. So Brad Reese says, ready, set, learn. I love it. We've got Justin tuning in from Orlando, Florida. That's only like 2 hours away, Justin. You didn't tell me you were in town. But guys, I want to make sure we cover this rule. Money can be learned about. It's not impossible. The other thing we have to remove is the know-it-all mentality. I already know that. And this comes from two different places. I've already got information on a topic and it's called a fixed idea. I'm so insecure with this information that I'm not willing to open my mind up to the fact that there might be something else. That's not knowledge. That's prison. Okay. That's prison that we put ourselves mentally out of fear. We're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid to not know. So we say, I do know, even if I don't, just so that I can check off the box and not have to be in this position of not knowing, right? We'd rather know a lie than not know the truth. Okay. So that's the first side of being a know-it-all. The second side is actually like the repetition thing. I've heard this before. You've already said this. I watched this, read that. Guys, repetition is the reason we learn. It's the way that we get certainty. It's the way that we get information to stay in us as we repeat it over and over and over. Okay. The way that I've succeeded financially, guys, I read and watch and listen to the same stuff from the same people. I'm not out there exploring. I'm not dabbling. I'm not a dilettante, meaning I don't play around and mess around and be an amateur in all these different areas. No. I pick one or two or three things. I pick one or two or three people and I go deep on everything. And I block everything else out. It's tunnel vision. And it's actually very, very helpful. But with that, you have to be willing to say, okay, I know that I saw this before. What else can I get from it? Right? Because this idea of I've done this before, it doesn't apply to me. Like, guys, apply that to eating. I already ate dinner once. I don't need to do it again. Going to the gym, right? I worked out when I was 12 in gym class. We played kickball. I'm good for the rest of my life. right? Like spending time with your spouse. Like, oh, we went on our first date. We're good. We don't need to go on more dates. We just went on the one, right? Sometimes we'll make eye contact. Okay. So this idea that I've heard this before, I don't need to see it again, it actually robs us of the real knowledge. The real knowledge is when we squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and get the good stuff out of it. Okay. So those are my first two ground rules. The second one is I want you to have a reason to be here. We don't do things without a reason. Nobody does anything without a reason. And so if you don't have a reason to be here, you're not going to do anything with the information, right? You're here to just be entertained, or maybe to troll, or maybe you don't know why you're watching this. Sometimes at 3 a.m, we find ourselves watching infomercials and we're like, I don't know why I'm here. I can't turn this off, but I'm here watching these. And I don't want this to be that moment. Okay. I'm not here to sell you a Swiffer. We're talking finances. So pick a reason. Why are you here? You saw this title, How to Invest $100,000. Okay. You either want to have $100,000, or you've had $100,000 before and you're like, did I make the right decision? Or you currently have $100,000 or some dollars and you're like, where do I put this? Right? One of those three groups is probably where you fit into. Okay, well, what are you going to get from this course tonight? Learning is subjective. It's not objective. People get different things. The people that follow the first two rules, it's not impossible to know and I don't know everything. They're going to get the most out of this course tonight. This could be $1 million course. This could be $100,000 course, because that's what they got out of it. Okay, so have a purpose for being here. Think about what you're going to do with the information. Be a producer, not a consumer. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the course. So guys, really quickly, my story on this, I didn't grow up with money. Okay, I've told this story before. My family, we were a food bank family. We would wait in line at church in the cold and the rain to get spoiled cereal and sour milk. Free lunch kids. When I was 8 years old, my parents got divorced. Over finances, we lost the house. The car got repoed. Like, I remember them actually taking my mom's car away, and I was homeless all in the same summer. Okay, not a good year for me, the year of 8 years old. Okay, I was a kid, so I didn't really know. It was just like, living life and stuff, right? But just to point that out, I didn't come from money. We didn't inherit anything. Nobody in my family was a big earner. And so this idea of having $100,000, like, honestly, the closest thing, and this is not a cliche or joke, the closest thing I ever had was the actual candy bar, the 100 grand. That was literally the closest I actually ever thought I would be to having 100 grand. I would make jokes with my brothers when we get them, be like, man, we're rich. And we'd have our little 100 grand candy bars. Okay. I know that sounds super cheesy and cliche, but that's actually the way it was. Okay. So growing up, I didn't have this idea that I would ever have $100,000. I didn't have this idea that would be a reality. I didn't have this idea that investing was going to be something that I'd need to learn about. And so I didn't think about money. I didn't think about finances. I didn't think about investing. And all of a sudden I started learning about money. Russell Ruda, Russell's from Houston High School. Russell and I grew up together. So Russell's saying, rep in Houston, we ain't fast, but we get there. Exactly. If there was ever a slogan for Houston, that's the one. We get the job done, man. We get the job done. What can I say? We drink PBR while we do it. So I didn't ever think that I would have to learn about finances, and I started to win with money. And I made this decision early on in life that I wasn't going to participate with money. I dealt with poverty. Lexi and I were squatting in an abandoned house within our first 6 months of being married. And so like, this was this decision that I was like, well, I can't not, like, money is going to follow me around for the rest of my life. I realized this. At the age of 19, I realized that. I was like, money is going to follow me around for the rest of my life. It's going to drag me kicking and screaming. So and I'm not a loser, right? Like, I'm not somebody that just like goes down for the count. So money was beating me up, and I finally got mad, and I was like, all right, I'm done. Like you wanted me in the game. I'm in the game. I'm going to play now. Let's figure this money thing out. Right. Went from being homeless to then starting my own business, working that, in my spare time while I delivered pizza. And for me, one of the defining moments for me was my mom got sick. Okay, so for those of you who know the story, my mom got stage 4 terminal cancer. Within 6 months of being diagnosed, she passed away. And I was her financial advisor at the time. So I set up her retirement account with the, mom, when you turn 60, we're going to be able to start taking withdrawals from this, and you'll have a retirement. Well, at 60, she died. Okay, not only that, I was still doing pizza during the day. Okay, like afternoon shifts, and into the late nights, even doing my business a little bit here and there, but I couldn't get the time off on Christmas when she passed away. I had to work that day. Okay, so that was another moment where I made the decision of, okay, like, I'm going to figure this money thing out. I'm never having this happen again. I'm never not going to be able to help out. I'm never not going to be able to contribute. I'm never going to have to continue trading my time when it counts the most for other people, because this matters to me. So I started learning about money. And before I knew it, I started learning about, okay, well, I need to earn income. And then I got good at earning income. And then I was like, okay, well, then I need to know how to save the income. Okay. And then I need to figure out how to invest the income. And that was the part where I was like, okay, well, what do I do here? Right. My very first investment, guys, it was in a mutual fund. Okay. I purchased a mutual fund. A mutual fund is a retail financial product. It is not an investment. It's a retail financial product where this giant company buys a bunch of shares of a bunch of stocks and bonds and different things, and they package it up and they sell it to the consumer, and they charge a ton of fees. Okay, it's like the fast food of investing. That's what a mutual fund is, right? Like the McDonald's, the Big Mac. So I was investing in the mutual fund, and like I didn't know what I thought I was doing a great thing. I was like, this is tax-free municipal bonds. I was like, this is tax-free. I don't like taxes, even though I made like $20,000 a year. I wasn't paying any freaking taxes, but the redneck in me was like, I don't like taxes. Like, I'm not going to pay them. I'm going to invest in a bond fund. And then like I had to pull that money out because I had to buy a car. Okay. On a mutual fund, when you invest, you pay what's called a front end load. Okay. A front end load means you're going to pay a fee to put your money in the fund, which to me doesn't make sense now. Why would I be paying you the fee to let you speculate with my money? You should be paying me the fee for the privilege. I didn't think that way back then. I was like, okay, so I paid a 5.75% front end load. And within a couple of months, the car broke down and I had to, Russell's currently drinking PBR. He just messaged me. That's awesome. I called it the way it is, guys. That's how it is out where we grew up. So I had to pay a 5.75% front end load. I had to pull the money out to buy a car several months later. And so what happened was I ate this 5.75% fee and I didn't make that money back because I didn't have it in long enough to make the money back. So I paid the fee, I withdrew my money, right? Had less than I started with, and then I bought the car. Right. And that was my first investing experience. I think that was with like $3,000 or $4,000. Okay. And so I started to then, like learn about, well, what do I need to do? And I finally got to the point in my business where I had $100,000 saved up. Okay. I remember this moment. It felt like it was life-changing. My first 10,000 felt life-changing. I remember when I made 10 grand, I texted my manager and I was like, you changed my life. I literally don't think I have any relatives I've ever met that have made 10 grand like that. Like that's, unbelievable. Thank you so much. And then I got to 100, and at 100, what happened was I was seasoned at earning. Okay. This is the mistake people make. I was earning, and 100,000, this might sound like condescending. It's not that much money. Okay. Especially in today's environment. If you have a family, 100,000 doesn't cut it. For annual income, that's hard to live on, right? Like back when I grew up, sure, you could pull off, 40, 50,000. Today, 100,000 is tough. Inflation, real inflation last year was 15%. So that 100,000, now it's only 85, right? But I was good at earning. I was starting to learn how to sell. I was starting to learn how to market, how to work with clients and service people and make money that way. And I mistook that for financial literacy. Okay, all of you guys that are entrepreneurs and business owners out there, like take the pride hat off. Being good at business is not financial literacy. Being good at earning income is not financial literacy. They're two different things. Okay. Being good at earning income means I'm good at exchanging value. I'm good at communicating. I'm good at performing a skill. It does not mean I know about taxes and bookkeeping and investing and life insurance and gold and silver and inflation and deflation and interest rates. The two aren't the same thing. And so I started falling into this confusion of thinking being good at earning meant that I was financially literate. And I started to be like, oh yeah, I'm good. Like when I'm ready to, I'm going to start buying real estate next. And I was telling myself I was going to do all these things. The reality was I didn't know the first thing about any of that. Okay. Then I started saving. And at the time I was just saving it in the bank. Okay. And I thought that meant I was also financially literate. I was like, I'm saving money now. I'm saving more than other people. Usually comparison mindset falls into this. And so saving must mean I'm financially literate. Well, no, I was loaning 100 grand to the bank and I was paying, I was being paid measly interest, like 0.01%. They were making double and triple digits on my money. And I thought for some reason that meant I was financially literate. This actually meant I was a sucker. I was being taken advantage of by the banking system. I had no idea how any of that stuff worked. Okay. And it finally came time to invest. Luckily, because I was so focused on saving, I didn't make the investing mistake soon enough. Right? Like at 30,000, I could have bought a fourplex and lived in one unit. I thought about doing that. Lexi and I talked about it. We ran the numbers. We're like, nope, that doesn't make sense. I don't know why those people are doing that. That's not something we want to do. Right. And so somehow, some way, I avoided one of the number one mistakes investors make, which is starting too early. Okay. Who's ever heard this? Start early. We've heard this as an advantage. Wall Street, they tell us start early. You know, put in $50 a month in your 401k if you can. They tell us a story of you know, Ben, who started investing at 18, and his brother who waited till he's 22, and how his brother's so bad off because he waited those 6 years. The reality is, if I would have started early, I never would have got the 100 grand. And I would have invested in something that I didn't like, that I didn't understand, that didn't fit me, that didn't fit my goals. Okay. That wasn't vital. The mutual funds aren't vital. And that was overpriced. And I would have been stuck with it. Investments, a lot of them are easy to get into. They're very difficult to get out of, especially if it's real estate, right? Let's say that I did the $30,000 down payment on an FHA loan, and I bought a fourplex, and I lived in one unit and rented the other 3 out. Guys, I would still be in that neighborhood today, still trying to service those tenants, still trying to shovel the driveways, and it would cap out. I wouldn't be anywhere I'm like close to where I'm at today. And I know that because the people that are still there where I lived are still doing that stuff. Okay. And if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But I'm telling you, get to this point. The first key to investing 100,000 obviously is to have the 100,000. We've got to get to that point. And so I tell my clients, you know, don't invest till you've got 50,000. Don't invest till you've got 100,000. Okay. So get there, get a number that's big enough. And I've talked about this before. When you get a big number like this, what happens, and what happened for me was I was afraid to lose that money. Okay. I actually cared enough where I was like, I don't want to lose that money. Okay. I got someone in the comments. I know that's my boy Rika. He says, I'm with you, man. He sees the same thing. Like, I don't want to live in the same neighborhood in a unit renting to those people for $900 a month while I, you know, scoop the sidewalks and do all the stuff. Right. But when I got 50,000 and 100,000, A, I knew that was enough money to make a good investment. B, I knew that was enough money that if I lost it, it was going to take me forever to get it back. And that's a good fear to have. That slows me down as an investor. It makes me consider, what am I investing in? So I want to talk about what I actually did. There's a lot of things I could have done. And so what I actually did when I started to look at, okay, well, I'm going to move this out of the bank now, because I realized I don't want this in the bank. Okay. I started learning about the banking system, and I was like, I don't want them borrowing my money and paying me 0.10% and making double and triple digits. I don't want them pulling a bail-in on me where the economy crashes and the bank uses the deposits to cover their bills and they don't have to pay me. And that happens before the FDIC insurance kicks in. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to move this money out of the bank. What do I do with it? Okay. So the first thing that I looked at was how do I maximize this? Okay. Because I wasn't very successful in business yet. Sure, I had my first 100,000, but I had doubts. I was like, well, what if I don't make another 100,000? What if I fail? What if something goes wrong? What if an emergency happens? I want to get as much as I can out of this 100,000. That was the poor kid in me. I was like, squeeze the pennies for everything you can, right? Like penny pinch it to death. I've got, how many pennies is 100,000? Is that 1,000,000 pennies? That's 1,000,000 pennies, isn't that right, Lexi? I think that's 1,000,000 pennies. I was like, I got like 1,000,000 pennies. I'm going to squeeze the copper out of these 1,000,000 pennies. Okay. So I started looking at it, and the decision I made is I decided I'm going to put this in life insurance. Okay. Super weird decision for a 22-year-old, 23-year-old. Let me tell you what, right? I'm going to put this in life insurance. That's not the thing you'd expect someone at that age to think about and do. So I started researching, and you guys have heard this story, and I learned that the top 1% of wealth, the largest corporations in the United States, the banks in this country, they keep their reserves in high early cash value, dividend paying whole life insurance. Okay. That title is lengthy. It's not just any life insurance. It's high early cash value, dividend paying whole life insurance. Okay. And the reason why I put this there is I realized, number one, if they're doing it and I copy them, I'm at least going to be kind of successful, right? They're not stupid. Right now they have my 100,000 in the bank, and they're using it because it's deposited with them, and they're buying life insurance. So if I just copy what they do, I'm going to get kind of close to where they are, even if I mess it up badly, right? That was my reasoning. Okay. So the thing that I looked at here is the protections that it has. And people don't talk about this enough. I talked about this with my clients this week. So number one, this is guaranteed against death, right? Like for me, I was married at the time. Okay. So when I die, Lexi's going to get several $1,000,000. And at the time, I didn't already have several $1,000,000. So that was my way of securing the bag. I was like, if I fail, she's going to win. Okay. There's not any way that my family legacy doesn't carry on. There's not any way that financial independence doesn't occur in the Fetta family. It's going to now, no matter what, because I just made it happen. Okay. Most investments aren't like that. If I was like, hey, I want to build up a $2 million real estate portfolio and I die at 300,000, chances are she's not going to carry it on to 2 million. Okay. If we have kids and grandkids, they're not going to be like, oh, we'll do it. Like, cause I'm not there to teach it. Right. So I was like, okay, well, no matter what, this is going to pay out. If I put in at the time, my money that I was putting in, I'm going to get $2 or $3 million that pays out tax free. That's a lot more than I'm putting into it. That makes sure that she's going to be taken care of. Okay. Because financial independence wasn't just about me. Okay. That's the thing about it. Financial independence is bigger than just us. It's about our families. It's about our legacies. Sure. We get to enjoy it for the short period that we're alive, but we want to make sure that they start where we left off. So it's guaranteed against death. I like that about it. Okay. It's also guaranteed against loss. Okay. Cannot lose money, has never lost money. It's been around since before the Civil War. Every single depression, recession, you name it, that's happened since then, including 2020, including 2008, including the tech bubble, it still was profitable in those years. So it's guaranteed against loss. It's also guaranteed against taxation. Okay, I like this one. You're telling me if I put money in here, the IRS can't touch it. I can literally say, screw them, and they can't touch a penny of what I put in there. I like that. So it's guaranteed against taxation. It's also guaranteed against lawsuits. If I get sued, they can't go after my life insurance. Okay, it's guaranteed against creditors. Okay, I liked that too. Like I had some debt at the time. So I was like, okay, so if they collect on me or if I go file bankruptcy or whatever, they can't touch my cash value. Correct. They can't touch my cash value. They can't touch my life insurance. Okay. It's also private. Okay. We hear a lot about privacy and all these different things. The United States, we operate on laws. So if it's not written in law, it's not going to be enforced, right? In law, life insurance is private. It's a unilateral contract. It's contract law. Unilateral means one party. Nobody else can touch it, access it, see it, use it, take it, change it. Only I can. The insurance company can't even. Of course, they're going to see it because they're the ones that are underwriting it, but they can't go in there and change the contract. They can't access my funds. They can't give it to the government. They can't do anything. We hear about this, and it's ironic because we hear about this with crypto. There are no laws protecting crypto from any of those things. There are laws protecting life insurance from that. Okay, this one has been around 160 or more years, depending on the company, 160 plus years on average, right? So that's written in law. That's a unilateral contract. And then the other one it's protected against is opportunity costs. Okay, opportunity cost means I can have my cake and eat it too. Okay, and this was why I used it. I started learning this strategy called the infinite banking concept. Okay, I've coined it the sacred account because we do ours a little bit different. Opportunity cost means if I have money, like let's say I have this pen, let's pretend it's $1, it can't be in two locations at the same time, right? So if I spend it over here, I can't save it over here. If I save it over here, I can't spend it over here. If I invest it over here, I can't be saving it and spending it because it's over here. It can only occupy one space, right? That's just like a basic law of physics, right? But with life insurance, it can occupy more than one space, right? So with life insurance, I can deposit my dollar. My dollar will grow at 3 to 5% on average, tax-free. I can borrow against the dollar, have it still here growing, and it's over here now. And I'm pay 1 to 3% interest cost to do this. It's going to keep growing at 3 to 5. I can borrow 70 to 90% of it, right? Now I can use it for whatever I want to use it for. I can pay off debt. I can self-finance my vehicle. I can invest it. I can do all sorts of things with it and still have this part of it growing. So now I can have my cake and eat it too. It can be in two locations at the same time. Okay, I like this part of it because this is literally what banks do. It's called fractional reserve banking. When you deposit money in a bank, they have a reserve requirement, which currently is 0, meaning they don't have to keep any of your deposits in reserves. And then they loan that money out. And so they make money on your money while they tell you it's in your account. Okay. And if you were to ask for it, sure, they can give it to you, but that's not your money that they're giving you. That's someone else's money. And so they're able to borrow against their account values and earn money in multiple locations at the same time, and then pay you interest to do that. Right. So when I was opening up my first life insurance policy with my first 100,000, that was the first thing I looked at. Now I had debt. So this is what I was looking at. I was like, okay, I have consumer debt. Some of you guys might be in this position. I had car loans and I had credit cards. Luckily, I didn't have student loans. I didn't have anything crazy. It was just some car loans and some credit cards. So with my life insurance, what I did is I deposited the money into the life insurance. I borrowed against it. And then I used that money that was now growing at 3 to 5% forever with all of these protections and guarantees. By the way, no other asset has all of this, only life insurance. I borrowed against it and I used it to pay off my debt. Okay. And then the minimum payments that I used to make, I then started paying my loan back on my life insurance. Now, here's what I looked at, because I could have taken the 100 grand and done something else. I could have put it into real estate. I could have done private lending. I could have bought gold and silver. I looked at the fact that my debt cost me a monthly payment. So I think, between the car and everything, I think it was like $2,000 a month. Okay. $2,000 a month total. That was my cost, right? Car loan was around 6%. Credit cards are what, 15, 16%. So let's say they're 15 on the credit card, 6 on the car. That's 21. We divide that. But let's say the interest on average was 10%. 10% interest is what I was paying on my debt. And I think in total it was, I think probably about 70. Okay. So this is what I'm looking at. Okay. If I take 70 grand and I pay off my debt, this is going to pay me $2,000 a month, because I don't have to pay that $2,000 a month to the bank anymore. I keep the 2,000, right? That's no different than me investing 70 and it paying me 2,000, me getting 2,000 I wasn't going to get. It's money that I didn't have otherwise because of the 70,000 that I put into it, right? So I'm getting $2,000 a month. Now, if I take 70K and I invest this at 12%, that's only $700 a month. See that? I would rather have 2,000. 2,000 is more than 700. My interest rate is 10%, right? So if I pay off the debt now, I don't have to pay the 10%. I was going to have to pay it for sure if I kept that debt. So by not having to pay it, it's like I made the 10% because now I get to keep that interest. That's my interest, right? So I'm making 10% by not paying 10%. So I'm going to get $2,000 a month. I'm going to make 10%. And this is all the G word. This is guaranteed. Why? Because I'm currently paying it. It's debt. I paid off the debt. It's gone. Guaranteed, I will get the $2,000 a month now. Guaranteed, I won't have to pay the 10% interest. So I'm looking at this as a brand new investor. Okay. And the reason why I was able to come to this conclusion was because of the studying that I did on money. This is why I tell you guys, like, invest time in financial literacy, study and learn. This is not things that people are going to tell you. Nobody's going to walk up to you on the street and be like, hey, this is a good idea. You should do this. And even if they did, you're not going to listen to them. It's got to be your own idea. So I was studying and I started learning this stuff and I was like, okay, this makes sense, right? I would rather have the guaranteed money. I don't want to have to go speculate. I don't want to think about, okay, I could have made 2,000 instead. I'm making $700. Okay. So I'm looking at all this and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to put my money here first. I'm going to tag it into this account. And when I do this, I'm going to get rid of my debt. Now, here's the beauty of that. The money's still growing. That 100 grand that I put into it, this is still earning 3 to 5% while I'm using it, right? So I'm storing my value in the life insurance. It's growing for me. It's guaranteed. It's all protected. And I'm going to pay myself back. Now, here's the kicker, guys. This was years ago. I still have that $100,000 today. The same 100 grand. Why? Because I put it in the life insurance first. So it's still been growing this whole time. When I repaid it, it was all there. That was the original money that I put in plus interest, right? So I paid off my debt. Now, the next thing that I did is I decided, okay, I'm going to keep money in reserves. I tell my clients, keep 6 months in reserves. Okay, 6 months of expenses in reserves. I'm going to keep it in my life insurance, right? Why? Because all of the things I mentioned, right? It's got a death benefit. It's guaranteed against loss. It's guaranteed against taxation. It's guaranteed against lawsuits, creditors. It's private. It's got a protection against opportunity cost. And it's also guaranteed to grow. Okay. I can't get that anywhere else. There's literally no other place that gives me all of this, plus the liquidity of pulling the money out if I need it. Right. Like that was always the fear with the emergency fund is, well, what if I need it? And then I would just leave it in the bank. Okay. And the entire time it's in the bank, they're beating me up. They're paying me nothing and they're getting rich off of my money. So instead, I'm like, well, I'm not going to keep my reserves in the bank anymore. I'm going to keep them in my life insurance. Now, the reserves I don't touch. Even today, I think we just dropped another 5 figures into the life insurance because we need to shore our 6 months of reserves up. My company just hired people. So we're like, okay, we need their salaries and reserves. So we took their salaries times 6 months. Boom, let's drop that into the life insurance right now. Okay, that's money that I don't invest. That's money that I don't touch. Now, here was the mindset shift that I had to make. The old me, the poor me was like, well, if I don't invest that money, I'm wasting it. Okay, well, if I invest that money and then I have, COVID happen or lockdowns or whatever, or the economy tanks, I don't want to have to go lay off all my staff. So I'm willing to leave that there. I know that I can go reproduce the income. Fear of not investing is actually an indicator that I can't earn more income. I don't know how to increase my income enough. So I'm like, oh, I have to invest. I have to invest. I have to invest. Okay, somebody that is really well-rounded in finances where they can earn really well, they can save really well, and they can invest really well, they're willing to waste. They're willing to say, hey, I'm going to let this money stay in reserves. I'm not going to invest it. I'll just go earn more. Right? Or they lose money on an investment. Instead of saying, I'm never investing in, they're like, that sucks. I'm going to learn my lesson, but I'm going to go earn more. Or my tax bill is more than I thought it was going to be. And instead of stressing out and going in a contraction mode and trying to cut out, buying coffee and going out to dinner with my spouse and, taking the kids on vacation, I'm just going to go earn more. I'm just going to go earn more and that's it. And the way I earn more is by earning more. There's not a secret. There's not a little code. You just go earn more income. What do you do now to earn more income? Go do more of that. Right? Like that's all it comes down to. So I made the decision that I was going to be solvent. I was going to invest in my own solvency by leaving that money in reserves. Okay. So my 100 grand basically at this point was used up already. I paid off my debt. I set aside reserves. Okay. Now, was this exciting? No. I have friends that are buying real estate. I had friends that are doing, foreign currency trading. Crypto wasn't cool yet. So I didn't have any friends doing that. I still don't, because if they're doing that, they're probably not friends with me after watching my content. But I had this thing of like, a little bit of fear of missing out. It's called FOMO, right? I was like, did I make the right decision? Today, I can tell you definitely yes. Okay. The fact that I was now able to be my own banker and pay my own debts back, that money, that $2,000 a month started building back up in my cash value in my life insurance really quick. And so it wasn't long before I had enough money in there to say, okay, I'm going to start doing cool things with this. In addition to that, because I had 6 months of reserves, I wasn't stressing out all the time. When I wasn't stressing out all the time, I could earn more income. Okay. When I wasn't marketing and selling out of fear and desperation, because people can sense that and feel that, I was able to be like, cool, I don't care if you don't sign up. Right. Or I don't like that person. They're not going to be my client. Or let's try this idea. And I could really be creative and not worry about anything bad happening because I know for 6 months I'm good. My employees are good. My marketing budget's good. My office rent's good. All that stuff's taken care of. Guys, that's what solvency is about. Burn 6 months to have that. Okay. Like it's actually a form of poverty mindset to not, for me to say, I'm not going to do it. I can't afford. That's poverty mindset. Okay. I'll tell you guys this story really quick, and I'm never going to put myself in this position again. This was several years back. Okay. We probably, before a lot of you guys knew me, some of you guys were clients already. We expanded our team really quick, right? We got up to the point where we had like 15 staff members, right? And I didn't have reserves built up. I was like everything was like a shoestring. Profit margins were slim. We were spending basically what we were making. And so we're like, we need to hire, we need to expand. Let's do that. I didn't have my reserves. So we hired five new people, or was it 7 new people? It was 7 new people. This is like the biggest asshole moment of my life. We hired 7 new people. Okay. Late one year. It's around Christmas, Thanksgiving season. And I realized that because of these new staff members, we're not going to be able to pay our bills. And so I had to call each one of them into my office one by one, literally right before Christmas, and fire them, let them go and say, hey, sorry, I can't afford to keep you. And these were good people. These were people that if I had kept them, they probably would have done great. And I had to call each one of them into my office, single file, one after the other, and have the old yeller talk with them and tell them I can't afford to keep you because I didn't have my reserves. Okay. And so that's when I decided nothing is worth that. For me to say I fired 7 people, but I was able to do this cool investment deal, I don't feel good about that. Okay, when you're a business owner, it hits different. No different than when you're a family. If you've got kids and you're like, I can't feed my kids, or I can't take them to school, or I can't let them do sports, it's no different. It sucks. And no investment deal convinces me that it's worth that. So keep that 6-month buffer there, and you're going to be happy you did. And it's going to give you a lot of freedom to do other things. Now, the great thing is once I got through that and I built my 6 months up, I got rid of my debt, all of these things, I started paying myself back. My income increased. I started contributing more income into my life insurance, and I was able to then self-finance my vehicle. Okay. I was able to borrow against my life insurance and buy my vehicle and make payments to myself and earn the interest myself and have my cash value growing instead of making those payments to the bank. Okay. And for me, that was a game changer. Like, I grew up in a family where the nicest thing you were going to own is your car. Like, who was raised that way? Like, we didn't even own the house. So if you were going to own something, it was going to be a car, and that was going to be the most expensive thing you owned. And you were going to either pay cash for a hoopty, a beater with a heater. You buy it for $3,000 on Craigslist, and you're going to put $3,000 in repairs into it the same year, or you go finance something from the bank, and you've got this car payment for the rest of your life. I was that car payment guy from the age I was 19 onward. Financed my first vehicle at 19, always had a car payment, never didn't have a car payment. And so when I was finally able to self-finance my car and tell the bank, screw you guys, like, I'm the bank now, I make the payments to myself, I earn the interest on my own money. That for me was like, all of the stuff I mentioned was good, but that was for me when I turned the corner, when I realized like I legitimately am my own bank, right? Because I knew I was going to pay off the debt anyways, but I didn't know I was going to self-finance my car. That wasn't always the plan until I learned I could do it. Once I did it and finally did it and actually executed on that, that's when my eyes opened to, okay, I understand what this concept is. I'm doing this all with the $100,000 I started with. Why? Because it's still there. I borrow against it, I use it, I repay it back, right? I borrow against it again, I use it, I repay it back. And that money is there the entire time, and I keep adding to it, right? The problem is, if I would have taken this $100,000 and done a private lending deal, right? Great, I'm making $1,000 a month. All these things I did aren't going to be with the same $100,000. In economics, there's something called monetary velocity. How quickly does money move, right? The quicker money moves, the more expansion you get from it, the bigger the economy gets. So when I can take $100,000 and move in and out and in and out and keep doing all these transactions, that's going to give me a greater monetary velocity than I put it into a deal, and that deal now pays me $1,000 a month, and in 10 years, I'm going to have the money back, right? Or 5 years even, right? I did more in that period with the first $100,000 that I could have ever done any other way, right? So I was doing this, and then finally I did get to the point where I could start investing. Okay, and this is what I do today, right? I use life insurance for this still. Okay, I take money from my life insurance policy, I borrow against it, and then I loan it out. Okay, and so I'm making 3 to 5% on my life insurance. It's costing me usually, for me on average, my interest cost is usually about 1 to 2%. And that's because I pay myself back. And then I'm making 8 to 12% on my lending deals, right? So 3 to 5 plus 8 to 12. Okay, now here's what I love about this. As an investor, like, and for you guys that are clients and followers of mine, I know you're not speculators. You're not like, how do I turn my $100,000 into $1 million in the next 18 months by buying stocks and cryptos? Like, that's not my audience. That's not who you are. You're like, okay, well, first, I remember working for this, which is a profound thing, working for your money, right? Like, that's not something that happens every day now. I remember working for this, and I remember working hard, and I remember sacrificing and not buying things and forgoing things to put it there. I don't want to lose it. For me as an investor, that's still my first thought. I do not want to lose the money. Okay. So it doesn't matter how great of a rate of return you can show me. The first question I'm asking is, how could I lose this? And in what ways are we protecting against that? Okay. So when I'm investing with the life insurance, I'm locking the 100,000 in. That money will always be there forever. It's going to grow forever. Even if the investment goes south and I lose out on the private lending deal, I still have my $100,000 in there growing. So in a way, I've guaranteed myself against loss because of the fact that as long as I repay my loan, I'm always going to have that 100 grand, and I will always have the interest that it was growing at. Even if it didn't work out on the investment, I'll still have that 100 grand and the future value of it there later. There's power in that. As an investor, it gives me some peace of mind. Now, the other thing is I'm not going to lose the 100,000 in the investment deal, right? I don't invest to lose. So I invest to make sure that I'm going to be profitable. So I know that my downside is protected. That's fine. Now with the private lending, the reason why I do this is because I want to own real estate, but I don't want to be a landlord, right? I currently live in an apartment. Who's ever lived in an apartment, right? Have you ever had moments where you felt like the shitty tenant? Like you're like, man, this is wrong. That's wrong. These people are loud, this problem, that problem. And then you realize like, oh no, I'm being a complainer. And then you realize that you live in a building with 400 of those people. And then you realize that somebody has to manage all of them. And you're like, man, I'm glad that person's not me. Who's ever gone through that mental thought process? I have, and I've rented my entire life. Even today I rent. And the reason why is it doesn't make sense for me to own a house right now. Okay. At some point in the near future, yeah, I'll do it. But as a renter myself, I'm like, there's no way in hell I want to be a landlord. Right? Like that's not something I'm interested in. I don't want to be fielding marijuana complaints. I don't want to be, calling. One of my buddies, he owned a rental portfolio in Indiana. He's like, yeah, I had like 15, 20 rental properties. One of them they had to call the SWAT team on. Like there's nobody I want in my life where there's the potential that I will have to call a SWAT team on you. That's not a business transaction I want. That's not a friendship I want. That's not a relationship I want. There's nobody in my life that's worth it. Now, if you couple that with the fact that that individual that he just called the SWAT team on only pays him like $1,200 a month for that privilege, that's a subscription Jerry service that I'm never going to offer, right? So I don't want to deal with that. Now, as a private lender, what's happening is I'm saying, hey, like let's say I loan the money out. You are the borrower now. I'm not your landlord. That's not the relationship here. It's your property. Okay. Just like with the bank, when you borrow money for the bank for your mortgage, you're the owner. The bank doesn't care. You break the toilet, you fix it, right? Like you have marijuana problems. That sucks. You got to figure it out, right? That's the part of being a homeowner. Now, as long as you pay me my interest payment, we're good. If we're not, I'm going to foreclose and take the home back. Okay. And so in that way, there's no way that I lose on this. I'm either always making interest or I'm going to take the home back. Now, here's the kicker. This isn't like this in every state, but it isn't in many states. It's easier for you to foreclose on someone than it is to evict them, right? Like to foreclose, they only have to do one thing, which is not pay you. And all you've got to do is prove they didn't pay you. And that's super easy to prove. You just say, yeah, here's my bank account. See, it says they're going to pay me. Look, it didn't show up in my account. Let's foreclose, right? It says in the contract, we're going to go this route if this happens. There's no contestation there. Now, as a renter, as a landlord, I have to prove that there's reasonable grounds to evict people, right? So if I say they're smoking weed, how am I going to prove that? I can't drug test them. It violates the Fair Housing Act. If I say that they're being noisy, how do you prove sound? Like I literally, I'm going to be in court with a judge and I'm going to have to prove all of these things I'm saying about my tenant. Okay. And while that's happening in many states, they still get to live in the property. You think they're going to be nice to the copper and the walls and the china and all these things while they know I'm actively putting them through the eviction process? No, they're probably going to urinate on the carpets and do nasty things, right? So I don't want to deal with any of that. And that's why I like doing private lending. Now, the other benefit is on private lending, if I do this correctly, I'm able to still have this growing. And so the interest income comes back. I pay that back into my policy. The entire amount that I put into it is still appreciating. And then as soon as I borrow, or as soon as I accumulate enough to do another one, I borrow against it again and I keep going. And I keep going and I keep going and I keep going. And if you look at this, guys, like funds like BlackRock, they're buying up single family homes and they're doing things like owner financing and they're renting them out. They're giant. So if they want to rent out 1,000 properties, they've got the manpower to do so. But a lot of them are just doing owner finance. If you look at banks, they buy up properties all over the country through notes, and then they collect the interest. Okay. Like until you pay that property off, the bank's technically the owner. How many homes, single family homes, do banks own? How many mobile homes do banks own? How many apartment complexes do banks own? Where they're collecting interest on every single one. And this is the part that I want to impart to you guys. This goes back to the triangle of wealth. Earn, save, and invest. right? We're currently talking about the fact that I had $100,000 and I saved it up and then I invested it, right? But we have to talk about, well, how did I get the 100,000? I got the 100,000 through my business, through earning income. You got it through the same thing. You're either a business owner or an entrepreneur or a salesperson, or you're an employee and you earn good income doing that. So if I invest in something that distracts from my ability to go do the very thing that got me the $100,000 in the first place, I'm slowing my wealth down, right? For me, if I'm a business owner and now all of a sudden I'm also a landlord, and that requires X amount of hours from my schedule to go deal with the landlording, right? That's X amount of hours that I don't get to spend on my business anymore. Therefore, I have less units of time to go produce the income to save up the next $100,000, which means my next investment isn't going to happen as fast. Okay. Now, what happens if I keep doing that? I buy another property where I'm the landlord. Well, now I've got another barrier. Now I buy another property where I'm the landlord. Now I've got another barrier, and I keep doing that until I'm full-time landlord. I can't spend time doing the very thing that caused the 100 grand to come into my life in the first place. This is why people stall out, guys. There are some investors where they have, relatives or whoever to manage the properties. I'm not like that. You might not be like that either, right? Where you're like, yeah, and when they're not, what happens is they get 3 or 5 or 10, and then they stall out and they're done. They're either done because they can't get any more loans, or they're done because they don't want to deal with it. The headache is too bad. They're like, I don't want to pay 10, 20% to a property manager, because now my yield is so low where it's like, why did I invest in the first place to make 6% yield? I don't want that. I wanted 10 and 12 and 15. Now I'm making 6 because I'm paying this giant chunk to a property manager, right? Or I keep doing it myself, and now it's not passive income. Now I'm literally a handyman for hire. And I make a couple grand a month in income to do that. And it's not a fun lifestyle. Okay. I met a guy when I was in Anchorage. He bought his first unit, 40 plex, and he got it. And nobody told him. The realtor didn't tell him. The inspector didn't tell him. The mortgage guy didn't tell him. The insurance guy didn't tell him that the property was dilapidating. There was a bunch of deferred maintenance. And so when he bought it, he was spending 40 to 60 hours a week working on this property. Guys, that is not investing. You're now the boy next door. You're the handyman. That's not why anyone invests. That's a job, and you're not being paid very much for that job, right? So what you want to do is you want to earn, save, invest. You want to invest in things that are passive so that your time is freed up to go back and do the thing that caused you to earn the income in the first place. I can produce 100 grand again and save it through earned income faster than I can get it through investing. Okay. Not only that, it's risk-free. You can show me any crypto return in the world. I'll show you the return on how I earn income in my business. It's infinite. It doesn't cost me money. Okay. If you're profitable, it doesn't cost you money to make money in business. The money you spend on marketing and advertising or whatever, you make more than that in profit. Therefore, all that stuff was free. You just get free money out the back end of it. Right? My same thing. If you work a job, that's free. You don't have to risk capital, right? So you're exchanging labor for time instead of capital for time. You're putting the capital into stores of value and income producing investments, and then incrementally buying that time back. Okay. So if you've got 100,000, I would be considering this. I would not be looking at anything where I can lose money. We're about to head into a pretty rocky time economically, which is ironic to say because we're already in one, but we just keep kicking the can down the road. Guys, when inflation like this happens, they try and curtail it by raising interest rates. Interest rates being raised, it's a very similar function to insulin, right? Like when somebody has diabetes, they're lacking insulin in the bloodstream. If you add the right amount of insulin, it supplements and everything flows. If you add too much, you send them into a coma. Same thing happens with interest rates, right? So when inflation is too high, we increase rates. The Fed increases rates. The government brings rates up. It slows down the money circulation. The inflation comes down, prices come down because not as many people are transacting. But if they hit it wrong, it's no different than giving someone too much insulin. It causes deflation. Okay, deflation means prices drop, employment goes down, nobody's working, and money dries up. Okay, paper and digital assets are going to get freaking killed if we hit deflation. I mean, absolutely slaughtered. Why? Because people are going to sell for liquidity. Jobs will be lost, prices will come down, people aren't going to be hiring. And so the guy that owns the, 100 kilowatts of whatever crypto coin, he's going to have to sell that. The guy that owns all of the meme stocks that he bought in 2020, he's going to have to sell that. Right. And so for me as an investor, number one, that's great. Why? Because I have reserves. right? It goes back to point number one, have reserves. Okay. And also even better, if you don't have debt, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have this overhead where you're like, how am I going to make the car payment? How am I going to pay for the student loans and the credit cards? You don't have to worry about any of that stuff in your consumer life, right? So you put yourself in a position where, okay, well, I've got 6 months in reserves. I'm good. And also I've got liquid dry powder to go, buy and lend and do different things in this environment where there's all this opportunity because things have gone on sale. Okay. Things don't go on sale in inflation. They go on sale in deflation, right? So when this occurs, those that own physical assets that cash flow, meaning their income is greater than the expense on it, they're going to keep them. That's why I tell you invest for income. It might not make sense now where you're like, but I could be getting higher prices by buying Tesla and Bitcoin and whatever else, but those things don't pay you an income. And so when all of a sudden a deflationary environment happens and the prices come down on those, and also there's no yield, now it's just another thing we got to sell because we don't have income, right? So all this to say, if you do this the right way and you keep doing it, this is a really boring plan. This literally is all it is. You earn and then you stick it in life insurance or gold or real estate. And then you borrow against those things and you invest it in private lending. And then you do the same thing. You earn it and you do it again. You just keep going around and around and around and around. And you do that for 5 or 10 or 15 years. And before you know, you've got passive income that exceeds your savings, expenses, and taxes. None of your assets are correlated with the stock market. None of your assets are correlated with crypto. None of your assets are even correlated with the economy, really. People make their mortgage payments. If they default, you take the home away, you find someone else. If you maintain a good tenants and good screening and good lending and good funds, like you don't worry about that stuff. You lend to good people that work hard and they're going to keep paying their mortgage. Doesn't matter what the property value did because you made your money on the note. The beauty of this is if you're doing private lending, let's say you buy the property, for example, you buy it for 40 and then you lend it out at 70K and you charge 12%. You instantly made 30 grand there, right? It doesn't matter what the value of the property is. The principal on your note is 70,000, right? That's a great way to protect against, a deflationary environment where you're like, well, what if property values come down? It doesn't matter. You locked in 70K on the note. They're paying you interest on 70K and you're going to get the full principal of the 70K. If they leave, you just take the home back and do it again, right? So I could go on and on and on with this. The point being, guys, have some forethought, okay? If you've got money to invest, don't jump into it just because you feel like you need to. Right? Like there's no rush. Nobody's going to steal it from you. Inflation is going to be there anyways. If you're worried about it, just exchange it for a store of value. It's not like the inflation thing, guys. It's no different than the milk in your fridge going bad. It's got an expiration date. You knew that when you bought it, right? Like you already knew inflation existed when you started earning income and saving. That's always been a thing. And so if the milk's going to expire, we either drink it before it expires or we trade it out for something different, or we let it expire and go buy more. It's not a big deal. Right? This thing that inflation is the boogeyman. And so we need to make, knee-jerk bad financial decisions to avoid inflation. Well, what is inflation really? It's loss. Okay. What is a knee-jerk financial decision probably going to lead to? Loss. Okay. I would rather lose 15% on inflation than lose 40 because I made a bad decision, or lose 100 because I made a bad decision. 15% loss isn't as bad. Right now, if I'm putting it in stores of value, then it's different. Now I'm fighting off inflation. I'm prolonging it till I do invest. But my point here being is as long as you keep up this triangle of wealth, you're buying time and you can then make good decisions with your finances. Okay. So I want to open this up. I know that we didn't hit questions during. So if you have questions, I want you to drop them in the comments. If you're on Zoom, we'll mic up really quick. I'll answer those live. If you're on Facebook, just drop them in the comments and I'll read them off. If you're currently an investor, I want to talk to you about what are you doing? What questions do you have? What is your plan to achieve passive income greater than savings, expenses, and taxes? If you're like, okay, well, I've got money saved up. Where do I put it? What should I do with it? I'd love to talk to you about that. And if you're like, hey, I'm not there yet. I've been there, guys. I've been the person where I had 5 or 10 and I'm like, okay, well, do I put the 5 or 10 to work now? Or do I keep it and do something with it later? So I'd love to talk to you about that as well and how you can get to that $100,000 level in the first place. Good. Let me jump on Facebook first here and just see if we have any questions. All right. Good to see everybody. Justin, Brad, Andrew, Russell. Steve has a question. He says, in life insurance, I get 3 to 5% on 30% of it, or do I get 3 to 5% of the cash value that I borrow? Good question, Steve. You get 3 to 5% on 100% of it. So if you put the 3 to 5% calculation is based on your contribution. Let me go back up to the life insurance piece here. Yeah. So we're putting in the 100,000 in this example. You're making 3 to 5% on that entire 100,000. And then while you're making 3 to 5% on that entire 100,000, you can borrow 70 to 90% of that right away. You'll pay 1 to 3% in interest only on the parts you borrow, only on the 70 to 90, but you'll still make 3 to 5% on the whole 100K. Now, if I take that 70 to 90 and then I pay off debt, or I self-finance a vehicle, or I invest with it, now I'm making, let's say I invest, now I'm making 12% on the 70 to 90 that I borrowed. And also still 100,000 is earning me 3 to 5% on top of that. So excellent question. That's one that gets a little confusing, because in life insurance, you've got these different splits. You've got, if I put in 100 grand, I can borrow 70 to 90. What part of it's growing? We just calculated on the entire amount. Okay. And that's the easiest way to look at it. I put in this, what is this going to give me on the entire amount that I put in? Not what am I getting on this portion and maybe not on the rest. So great question there from Steve. Steve says, nice. It is very nice. It definitely is. Good. We've got a couple questions on Zoom here. Let me pull up my Zoom chat. Let's see here. A comment from Mark. Mark said, I thought life insurance IBC is not an investment. It's not an investment. If I said that, that was by mistake. IBC life insurance, it's insurance. So you might invest with it, meaning you're going to borrow against it and invest into other assets. But when you put money into it, that's not the act of investing. That's the act of storing value. No different than gold is not an investment. Gold is a store of value. Buying a property, buying land, that's not an investment either. That's also a store of value. If it was an investment, the SEC would regulate it, and everyone that sold real estate would have to have a Series 7 license. Because that's not the case. It's not technically an investment. Now, if it's rental and different things like that, then yeah, that's investment property. But if you're just buying a primary residence, you're just storing your value. So certain things you might invest with, you might borrow against, but they're not themselves investments. So good point there from Mark. We have a question here. It says, is that the whole life and how do I find one? So that is whole life that we're describing. Okay. So that's high early cash value dividend paying whole life insurance. How do you find one? You're talking to the right guy. My team can set these up for you. I think, Rika, I think that's you. If it's not, I apologize for calling you Rika, but reach out to my team, connect with Nano, send either Nano an email or send me an email, and we can get you set up. I think you may already have one if I'm talking to the right person here. If not, we can set you up with one. If you have one already, then we can help you maximize what you have. And then you can also open up more from there. We have a question from Sabrina. Let me see if we can bring a couple of these questions on live here. Sabrina, I'm going to see if you can mic up and I can answer your question live on the microphone here. All right, let's see if we have microphone capability here. Okay, Sabrina may not have a mic. So Sabrina's question is, do I have to deposit 100K or will they accept 20? So there's no rule on how much you have to deposit. So whatever works for you, it can be 20K, it can be 5, it can be 10. I just use the 100 as an example because that's a question we're asked very often. But if you have, a couple $1,000 saved up in the bank right now and you're like, hey, I want to put in 3 grand or in her example, 20K, you can start with that and then you can add more in as you go as well. Mark asks, is that 100K a one-time dump in or 100K per year? Good question. It could be either one. So you could do 100K dump in, or you could do 100K per year, or you could do both. The rule of thumb is if it's a dump in like 100,000, there's usually not going to be a limit on a one-time dump in, but they do need to see proof. The insurance company needs to see proof of where the funds came from. And here's the reason why. Okay. Let me go back to my list of things here. Because this is a private unilateral contract and nobody else can touch it. Let's say that you were Pablo Escobar and you had 100K and you put it in life insurance. All of the rules protect you. Like the IRS can't touch it. The government can't touch it. So the insurance companies have a lot of responsibility placed on them by these regulators to make sure that when money goes into it, that it's clean money. They're not doing, drugs and terrorism money and different things like that. So the 100K on a lump sum, we've had clients do 200K. We've had clients do 400K. As long as we can show where that money came from, then we're good. Now on the annual or monthly and the ongoing contributions, usually you can do a limit of about 15 to 20% of your income. And that's on your scheduled contributions. With that being said, if you're doing 100,000 per year, you might have, let's say 20 of that scheduled where it has to go in. And then you might have 80 of that's unscheduled where you're not obligated, but you could put it in if you'd like to. Or it could be, if you've got a giant income, 100,000 scheduled as well. Excellent questions. And on that note too, for Mark with his question, if you are doing 100,000 a year scheduled, you qualify for executive life insurance. Okay. Executive life insurance means that you get literally the same type of structure that banks and corporations get. So we tell people you can borrow 70 to 90. On executive life insurance, you can borrow usually like 95% or more from day one. Okay. But that's a minimum of $100,000 per year annual. So that's going to be more for our accredited investors and people that have the higher income range, they can commit to it. But that's an awesome setup if you can do that. Okay, good questions. I don't see any other questions here on Facebook or Zoom. So what I'll do here, let me just check one more time. Oh, a couple more questions here. We have one here that just came in. By the end of this year, I need to start looking for a new home. I have $70,000 saved from the sale of our last house. I'm in the process of starting a sacred account light. I want to use a Heloc, but I'm a little unsure how that fits together with the sacred account. Can you run through that scenario? Awesome question. Okay. So basically with this being said so the Heloc, first position home equity line of credit, that's what that stands for, home equity line of credits. Okay. With a Heloc, you either need to have 20% down, okay, or refinance a property that's already got 20% equity, right? So either way, the number is going to usually be about 20%. So if you're looking for a new home purchase, it's usually you're going to get less house on a Heloc. So sometimes what I'll recommend people doing is starting on a conventional mortgage. Even though long-term a conventional mortgage is a terrible financial product, it is something you can start with because you can put less down. You can do an FHA loan and put 3 or 5% down. On this model, you're looking at one thing and one thing only, and that's housing costs. Okay. Are my total housing costs lower if I buy versus renting? So if I put, 3 or 5% down on a conventional mortgage, between my principal, interest, taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, improvement, repairs, all of the things I'm going to spend on with a house that I don't usually have with renting. If I total all of that up, is all of that cheaper than renting? If yes, buying that house is a good call, right? And you'd put the down payment to do that. Now, with that being said, you'd also be doing principal pay down on the mortgage. So you're paying into a conventional mortgage, it's amortized. You'll pay down principal, and eventually that will be a 20% equity position. You can refinance it into a Heloc. Okay. With a Heloc, because of the way that it's structured, it's a two-way loan. You can put money into it and then pull that same money out of it. On a traditional or conventional mortgage, you can't. Right. So with that being said, the Heloc is a great product, but if you're not solvent and in the right position, it can also be a little bit sketchy because of the fact that it's a variable rate. You can pull equity out of it, meaning you can overextend. So we recommend with people, don't start that till phase 2. Okay. Specifically on our blueprint, phase 2C. Okay. So that's when you would do a Heloc as phase 2C. So if you're buying and you're on phase 0, phase 1, do conventional first. We can then refinance into it. Usually you'll get a nicer house if you do that too. So good question there. Once you do the Heloc, by the way, on phase 2C, that's going to be separate from your sacred account. That's our tier 3, right? So tier 1 is life insurance. Tier 2 is gold. You can borrow against the gold. Tier 3 is real estate. You can borrow against the real estate as well. And it's going to work very similar, but it's going to have a couple of different components. Let's see here. Okay, this is David. So how do I get rid of my 23% new credit card? I got a paper trail. I got it to keep a paper trail for tax purposes. So David, I would buy it out with the whole life insurance. So I'd set up a sacred account. I would borrow against it, pay the credit card off. For tax purposes, that's good. Just pay it off every month. So if you're using that for business transactions, great. That's awesome. And so basically with that 23%, if you buy the credit card off with the life insurance, you're no longer paying interest. And then as long as when you do business transactions on that card, you wipe it clean every month, you won't pay that interest rate on your transactions. Keith asks, how do I get the book? So this book is Blueprint to Financial Freedom. If you go to jerryfetta.com/B2F. Okay, that's jerryfetta.com/B2F. That's the letter B, the number 2, the letter F. And there's a whole chapter just on the Heloc, Keith. So that'll give you plenty of hatting and training on how that works. Good questions here. I think we have another one that just came in. Let me pop this one up in the chat. Question from Brian. Let me see if I can actually bring Brian on live here. Brian, I'm going to see if you can mic up. Let me see if I can bring you on live. I'll answer your question. All right, we're live with Brian. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to talk to you. What is your question?
So my question was, if we're doing 15 to 20% of our savings into the sacred account, and then an additional 5 to 10% into gold or silver, wouldn't it be faster? Or I guess my question is, why would you do both at the same time as opposed to just focusing on one, as far as saving up for investing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you could just do one. There's no reason you can't. The goal with saving is you want to get in a position where you are saving 40% of your gross income. So either you need to open up more life insurance policies because you're going to max one policy out at usually, like you'd mentioned, 15 to 20%. So you'd need maybe 2 or 3 of them to get to 40. For me personally, with life insurance, I like to get where I've got 6 months of reserves. And then I've got, if I'm self-financing vehicles and different things, I've got that in there too. If I have lines of credit, I keep 10% of the payoff value on those lines of credit in life insurance reserves as well. Beyond that, I then do gold. Gold is a little bit different than life insurance. And we've got a course on this, Brian. Ask Nano about the 3-tier banking system. Gold is going to give overall a higher historical return. So over the long haul, gold has done about an 8 to 10% annual return. Again, I can borrow at about a 1 to 3% interest cost. Now, it doesn't have all the same protections as life insurance. So it's a little riskier, but it does have a little bit higher of an annual appreciation and return rate. So with that, I'm typically going to do my life insurance, like I said, max it out, do my 6 months, build everything up there. And then once I've done that, instead of putting it all in life insurance, then I'll start doing some in gold. Now I can borrow against both of them, right? So if I was like, hey, I want to borrow 100,000 for a real estate deal, I could take 50 from my life insurance and 50 from my gold and combine it. So they ultimately can work together for doing private lending deals. And so it's something that doesn't compete against it, actually supplements just the gold over the long haul, potentially gives you more growth. And it's a little bit less of a hassle to set up, right? If I open up another life insurance policy, that's another person I've got to insure. That's more underwriting, that's more administration and paperwork. With gold, I just put in an order, ship it to a depository, and I can get a loan against it right away. So good question there from Brian. I think we had another one that just came in. Let me see here. I think this one might have been on Facebook. Steve asked about the executive life insurance. So with the regular setup, can you upgrade to executive? So with the executive, I think that is something you'd probably have to do a separate policy for. You could consolidate. So if you wanted to later set up the executive life insurance, you can exchange your current cash value into that one. So you do have just the one policy. So in a way, I guess you could say that's kind of an upgrade, but you'd be starting a new policy and then doing what's called a 1035 exchange. You'd be moving the old policy into the executive one at that point and then consolidating it into the one policy. So good question there from Steve. Awesome questions tonight, guys. I am loving it. Let's see if we have anything else before we wrap up here. I think that covers it. Oh, one more question. Okay. So, do you think it would be better to put a smaller down payment on a home, put the rest into the sacred account and do the HELOC later? We're currently solvent and debt free. In theory, I think that probably would be good. I would do the down payment probably from the sacred account. So that way So if you put the money into the sacred account first, you know it's going to grow. It's got all of the protections the sacred account offers. You borrow it from the sacred account, do the down payment on the home. The home should lower your housing costs. That's the key. The home should lower your housing costs in total compared to renting. With that savings, you would pay your sacred account loan back, right? And then once that's paid back, you then continue paying on the home until it's to the point where you could do a Heloc conversion once you've got that 20% equity position. So that's a way to do it. If you're already solvent and already debt free, depending on how quickly you get through the rest of your blueprint phases, you could get to phase 2, 3 quickly, or 2C quickly, and then jump right into the Heloc if that 70K represents a 20% down payment. And in that scenario, you would put that into the sacred account or into gold, borrow against it, and that'd be your down payment into the Heloc as well. Great questions. A couple more just came in. Let me see what we got here. Okay, Sabrina asked, can I borrow from a Roth IRA to create a sacred account? Unfortunately not. If you have a Roth IRA, you can't borrow against it, and you also cannot own life insurance. That's the IRS's rules with Roth IRAs. Now, Sabrina, you can do, it's called a self-directed IRA. So what that does is it allows you to buy gold, silver, do private lending, do gold leasing, a bunch of different things with your Roth IRA that you usually cannot do. So I would recommend looking into that. If you've got, usually if you've got more than 15, 20K in there, that's a good starting amount to check that out. If you connect with Nano Aquino on my team, Sabrina, he's my client manager. He can get with you on that and kind of give you some education on what that would look like, if that makes sense for you. Unfortunately, you can't do the sacred account and the life insurance, but there are other lots of things you could do. And asks, is tonight's recording going to be available to us? We will post this on YouTube. Yeah, so we will post it on YouTube. We'll send out the replay to my email list as well. So you can catch the replay if you didn't get the whole thing tonight, or if you just want to rewatch it. And like I said, repetition is the key to certainty. So if you want to just go over it again, you can do that too. Good. Let me see if we have any other questions here before we wrap up. Steve asks, is there a place where I can get a Heloc at a lower rate than a conventional loan? Steve, that's kind of a trick question. So on a conventional loan, the rate isn't actually what you pay. It's just what's advertised. So you want to look at, it's called your TIP, your total interest paid, I believe is what TIP stands for. Over the life of the loan, what's the actual interest dollars you pay? Usually it's a lot more than what they advertise. So the rate, because it's an amortized loan, it's part of its principal, part of its interest, versus on a Heloc. If you do the Heloc correctly and you use it as intended, oftentimes you're going to pay less in interest than a conventional. And then the other thing with a conventional is it's a one-way loan, meaning when I pay principal into it, I cannot pull the money out. It's now the bank's money. With a Heloc, it's a two-way loan. So if I pay principal, it actually reduces my interest cost next month because the interest is calculated off a smaller balance. And also I can pull the money back out again, and I can use that for investing in different things there. So there are ways to do that. We do help with Helocs on phase 2C. Okay. So when you get to phase 2C, we actually have a program to get you set up with the right bank, the right design, the right loan. There's education. We have a team that services the entire process. Awesome question there. Nicholas has a question. What is the cost to set up the sacred account? So the minimum that we require is at least a $250 a month contribution. You're not paying that to us. That's what you're putting into your account. And then we charge a one-time setup fee of $250. We include Wealth Dynamics University, our different books and courses on how the sacred account works. And then also the help setting it up, designing illustrations, doing all of that with you as well. So $250 one time, and then you're doing at least $250 a month into the sacred account as well. Great questions. Let me see if we have anything else here before we wrap up. Nano says, and the consultation comes with the $250 as well. Good point, Nano. Yeah, so that's included with the $250. Good. I think that might be all the questions. I don't want to cut anyone off, but it's getting late. So we'll wrap up here tonight. If you're watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure that you share this if this was of value to you. Again, if you have not gotten a copy of my book, you can go to jerryfetta.com/B2F. You can grab my book, Blueprint to Financial Freedom. And that's again, jerryfetta.com/B2F. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back again next week, same time. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you next time.